Hey everybody! Deltarune Chapter 5 just came out, and I have to say, this is clearly the most myth chapter so far. And by that, I of course mean that I would put it right at the middle when ranking all 5 chapters. Ooh! I just made you click on an early analysis and review by baiting you with a terrible take. Haha, got him! You thought I would talk shit about this game? Hell no, man, I love this game. Chapter 5 was amazing! So I'll be discussing it today, with some spoilers, so you've been warned. I will say whenever I get into heavier spoiler territory. This chapter takes place on the festival day, and then on the Flower Kingdom Dark World. This place is inside Asgore's shop, and as such, it is flowered and garden themed, with the most prominent Darkner characters being the 7 color flowers Asgore has. If I had to summarize the chapter in one phrase, I would say it is kind of messy, but extremely charming nonetheless. Okay, that's the review, thanks for watching! Okay, no, I actually got stuff to say. This chapter progresses the story in an admittedly much more tamed way, compared to chapters 3 and 4. There's no single huge reveal or oh shit moment, like the knight's first appearance in chapter 3 or the whole prophecy aspect that was introduced in chapter 4. Instead, this chapter opts for a plot that relies more heavily on the quiet character moments, and with a much more adventure-like feeling to it. Which I've seen some people criticize, but I think it works perfectly with the overall themes of escapism present in the chapter. Because both the Light World sequence and the Dark World are all about people dissatisfied with their current lives, their desires to escape them, and how they end up dealing with their realities. In the case of the Light World, we see this most prominently with Noelle. During the date with Susie, she mentions that she wants to leave town. That's the escapism, but if she is with Susie, then she can handle reality. And during the Dark World, this theme is on full display. Like I mentioned, the most important Darkners here are Asgore's flowers, with the main one being Flowery. Their main goal is to cheer up Asgore by creating a perfect world for him, since they feel they owe him everything. They want their Dark World to remain despite the danger it poses, but unlike Queen or King, it's not out of a desire for world domination or such, but rather because they think it's the only way Asgore may be happy. Simultaneously, there is a great conflict with the flowers, because unlike most Darkners, they can't actually exist in Castletown, they can only live in this particular Dark World. Their whole existence is escapism itself, so even if they were to be convinced that Asgore needs to face reality instead of cowering from it, they still need to hold on to their Dark World. This creates some really interesting antagonists, because despite them being mostly friendly towards the fan gang, they inevitably feel the need to oppose them. With this conflict, the chapter actually raises one of its most interesting points, it being in full display during a scene between Flowery and Ralsei. One dark fountain can exist without it being a danger to the world, so why does Castletown deserve it more than Flower Kingdom? It's a really compelling idea, even if I would have liked it to see expanded more. But I have mentioned Flowery and Asgore and the fan gang a lot, without actually getting into the characters, so let's talk about them. Starting with Asgore, I really loved what they did with him here. He starts off goofy, having fun with Flowery and enjoying the cute world his 7 flowers have built for him. But slowly, a darkness begins to brew around him, when his obsession with figuring out who created the Dark World begins to blossom. Haha, get it? Because flowers blossom and he is the Flower King and this is the Flower Chapter. As someone who isn't super into theories and especially predictions, it was really interesting to learn that Asgore knew about the Dark Worlds already, since the day Des disappeared, and his necessity to prove his innocence was very compelling. I do wish the chapter had taken this a bit further into darker places, maybe even getting an Asgore boss fight or something of the like, but still. The ending with him was very impactful though, and heavy spoilers now, skip to this time if you don't want to see it. Okay, spoiler time! The knight coming and taking Asgore, followed by Flowery's failed attempt at rescuing him, was the type of major plot point and cliffhanger this chapter was otherwise lacking. Something like this was needed to make the chapter feel more weighty and have major plot relevance, even though, again, it did feel a bit rushed. Continuing with the flowers, I really like these guys. I won't stop too much on them, since I want to make a detailed video about them, but I found them to be extremely charming. The break scenes with all of them were very funny, and such a worthwhile addition. That being said, despite how charming I found the flower characters, they were a bit one-note, and somewhat underdeveloped. But it makes sense, because of course the big one is Flowery. He is the still important Darkner of this chapter, occupying a similar role to Lancer, Queen, Tenna, and Gerson in previous chapters. This character is the classic lovable asshole archetype, the kind of guy you are charmed by despite how much you wanna strangle them. This trope is really well executed with Flowery. I simultaneously loved and hated this loudmouth twink. Everything about him is perfectly executed. His damn flower pants, his voice having actual voice lines, the fact he gave himself max stats in everything, and most of all, his fucking A and B introduction. I'm so glad this game has more budget for shit like this. His motivations were also very compelling, and even though yes, he is an asshole, you totally understand where he's coming from. Great character and antagonist all around. And finally, the fan gang. The development here was more subtle but really interesting nonetheless, with the start this time around being Ralsei, which was a nice change of pace. Their conflict of knowing a terrible fate is coming, but believe it to be inescapable, was very compelling. It dialogued really well with Flowery, who constantly pushes for a perfect world that cannot last, and also with the overall themes of escapism. There is a very powerful clash of ideas going on in this chapter, and I can't wait to see where Ralsei's storyline goes. Susie didn't get as much development as in other chapters, but I loved their date with Noelle. It was adorable, and seeing these characters finally get together was lovely. And a big spoiler again, I need to talk about the ending. Go to this timestamp. Okay, Susie choosing to make Castletown her home was at first shocking, but after some thought makes perfect sense, and is very much aligned with the themes of escapism of the chapter. It felt bittersweet, but simultaneously there is this feeling of dread coupled with the ending. Because you know this can't last. Susie can't actually live in the dark world. I'm both scared and very interested in seeing where this goes. In regards to Kris, they keep opening dark fountains and seemingly working with the night. Once again, I'm so curious to see where this goes next. A lot of the character work of the fan gang in this chapter felt like interesting setup for the future. That, added to the overall less plot-heavy narrative and the quieter, non-cliffhanger ending, gave this chapter the feeling of it being the calm before the storm. Of course we'll have to see what chapters 6 and 7 have in store for us, but everything feels as if it's gonna come down in a very dramatic and terrible fashion. I am hyped, terrified, and cannot wait. So far, I've expressed that I love what this chapter did, but you may have noticed that I constantly brought up the fact that I felt some of it was underdeveloped. That is the messiness I mentioned at the beginning. Chapter 5 throws a lot of ideas and characters around, and I do appreciate all of them, but I can't help the feeling that not all of them stick, at least not fully. Despite that notable issue I have with the chapter, it still is able to win me over with the charm of its writing, its character, and most of all, its world. I love the Flower Kingdom. This place rules. From an aesthetic standpoint, it is so beautiful and filled with personality. I would put it second, only beaten by the Cyberworld. Its introduction in particular was breathtaking. The switch from the red trees of the first Dark World to the pink cherry trees, accompanied by the jazzy OST, made for one of the best moments in the whole game. And the feudal Japan influence on the castle section made for a very memorable sanctuary. The enemies found throughout Flower Kingdom were some of the best in the game as well. The combat mechanics are great as always, and the enemies themselves were very charming. Once again, I'd say they are only beaten by the enemies of Chapter 2. But where the Flower Kingdom really gets to shine is gameplay wise. This is easily my favorite Dark World in that regard. It is by far the most entertaining one to explore, thanks in big part to the 2D platforming mechanic. After you get a certain key item, you are able to turn Deltarune into a side-scroller, and while this isn't some revolutionary platforming gameplay, it was nonetheless extremely fun, especially in the way it interacted with exploration. Because you now have to explore the world in the regular Deltarune style, but also in this side-scroller style, switching from one perspective to the other as to reach new places and find everything there was to find made for the most satisfying exploration in all of Deltarune. Finding all the pink coins in particular was a lot of fun, which leads me nicely into this chapter's secret boss, and spoiler again, this timestamp, you know the deal, yada yada. So, pink. I adore this fight. Once again, gameplay wise, this chapter really got to shine. The way this fight reinvented the purple soul mechanic was wonderful. They took what was a pretty fun but relatively simple and straightforward mechanic and brought so much energy and life into it. What originally felt like the slowest soul mode in Undertale now allowed for a frantic, tense and extremely fast-paced boss fight. The different movement layouts for the purple heart and the expanded mobility of it made it have a much higher skill ceiling compared to its original use. The date minigame whenever you achieve Mercy was hysterical, and I loved the overall narrative of the boss fight and character. I did not care for Mad Mew Mew in Undertale, mainly because I don't have a Switch and never faced it, but after this fight, I had to say, I am a fan of her. I do kind of have one major issue with this secret boss, and it has to do with the overall laid-back vibe of the chapter. I wish it had a bigger impact on the narrative, more akin to the secret bosses of chapter 2, 3 and 4. Pink felt very Jevil-coded. A great fight and character in a vacuum, but not that important to the rest of the game. But again, gameplay-wise, it is masterful. Which is kind of the overall theme of Chapter 5. Gameplay-wise, this is easily the best in the whole game, it's not even a competition. However, even if I personally didn't mind the tone of the chapter being more laid back, the plot and the narrative admittedly aren't as strong as the previous chapters. With the exception of Chapter 1. Of course it beats Chapter 1, and that's the crutch of why I would put Chapter 5 at the middle when comparing it to the other chapters. Of course it is better than Chapter 1 in every regard, and while the narrative is weaker than Chapter 4's, the considerably better dark world and exploration of it make me push it above that one, but the great aspects of Chapter 5 can make up for its shortcomings when comparing it to Chapters 2 and 3. Those two are more consistently great chapters in my opinion, even if Chapter 5 is better than them in some aspects. But definitely not all. Like I mentioned, I do like the vibe of the cyber world more. And while Flowery is a great character, he is no Gerson, he definitely is no Queen, and he absolutely is no Tenna. Oh my god, I love Tenna! Tenna is the best character in video game history, I fucking adore this guy, look at him go! Tenna rules, I love Tenna! Deltarune Chapter 5 gets a 9 out of 10. Same score I would give to Chapter 4. Mind you, from Chapter 2 onwards, they all are very close. This is a great game. And this ranking could totally shift in the future once the game is complete. Having the complete picture will probably retroactively change some of my opinions of previous chapters, but for now, I can confidently say that Deltarune Chapter 5 is the most myth chapter, while still being great. Let me know your guys' opinions of this new installment, I'm really curious of seeing what people thought about it, and once again, I can't wait another fucking year to keep playing this game. Toby, you are going to kill me. I have some more ideas for Deltarune Chapter 5 videos, so stay tuned for that. Next video is a Silksong one though. It still is my main thing, even if I did 3 non-Hollow Knight videos in a row. As usual, subscribe, comment, like, and that entire algorithm jazz. Okay everybody, have a nice day.